Good morning, this beautiful morning, and welcome to Idea TV newspaper review. I am Mary Ojimajo, and today we're going to be taking you straight to all our beautiful stories we have today on today's newspaper review. I hope you're sitting tight. Okay, so let's go to our first story we have today on our Daily Trust newspaper. Let's see the story we have on our Daily Trust newspaper this morning. One of the stories we have on our Daily Trust newspaper this morning on page 7 is genocide. U.S. lawmakers visit Nigeria on fact-finding mission. On fact-finding mission, that is actually an interesting one. And we also have another story on page 19 of our Daily Trust. It reads, what you should know about non-interest mortgage in Nigeria. What you should know about non-interest mortgage in Nigeria. And the next story is on page 7. Bandits kill 7 in Sokoto community. Bandits kill 7 in Sokoto community. Wow, that's actually a sad one there. And we also have on our big story this morning, why coups are unsettling West Africa. Why coups are unsettling West Africa. And we have the next story on page 7 also. The composed body of Quranic teacher found in Niger. Wow, that's actually a sad one. And on page 4, on page 43, we have Imo Seal Hotel mortuary over alleged organ harvesting. Imo Seals Hotel mortuary over alleged organ harvesting. That's actually a sad one. Okay, and in another big story this morning on page 5 and 6 of our Daily Trust newspaper, we have air fees arise by over 300% in 2 years. Wow. Airfares, rise by 300% in 2 years. That's a big one on our Daily Trust newspaper. And let's move to the next newspaper we have this morning. Let's see one of the stories we have this morning on the Nation newspaper. The Nation's newspaper. And one of the story we have, day of rescue. We have 100 Niger people out of hostage. That's a good news. And we also have 14 victims freed from Enugu forest. That's another good news on that. And we have 7 taken out from Kaduna forest. That's another good news on the headlines we have on the Nation's newspaper. And we have Nigerian sends fighters jet ground forces as true full coup in Bini Rep. That's another one we have there. That's on page 8 of the Nation's newspaper. And we have one of our big story. We have Ibaidu in talks with U.S. team, and that you will see it on the page 4 of the Nation's newspaper. And where we have another one there, we have Dr. Jumo Ibrahim, CFR. The profile of Dr. Jumo Ibrahim, CFR. I know you want to read through and know what you should know about him, so that you will get it on the page 2 of the Nation's newspaper. And then down of it we have Tinubu picks ambassador nominee from the top of Global University, and that you also see on page 2 and 3 of the Nation's newspaper. Let's dive into the next newspaper we have today on the Tribune newspaper before we go on our short break. Let's see what we have on the Tribune newspaper. We have UBA Group emerges Africa's Bank of the Year for third time in 5 years. I'll take that again. We have UBA Group emerges Africa's Bank of the Year for third time in 5 years. That's on page 5 of our Tribune newspaper this morning. It's actually a big one, and yes, congratulations to UBA Groups. And we have on page 2 of our Tribune newspaper, we have Benin Republic government force coup attempt arrest rebel soldiers. That's on page 2. And we have on page 28 FG FG secures release of 100 adopted pupils in Niger. FG secures release of 100 adopted pupils in Niger, and that's on page 28 of our Tribune newspaper this morning. And on the big story we have on the Tribune, we have insecurity. We have NSA U.S. Congressional delegation holds fact-finding talks in Abuja. NSA U.S. Congressional delegation holds fact-finding talks in Abuja, and that you see it on page 3 of our Tribune newspaper. That's actually the big story we have on our Tribune newspaper this morning. On page 2, we have Nigerians living in fear take drastic action. Ife Babalola tells Tinubu. What do you think about that? Actually, Nigerians are actually living in fear. Especially this December, many people are scared of traveling because of the insecurity problems. They do not want to travel. Everybody wants to stay put at their location, because hearing what is going on and watching what is going on TV tells a lot, and nobody wants to put their lives at risk. And at this point, it's a celebration month, but many people are not traveling due to the insecurity problems. What do you think? At this point, we want to say that you should send us your comments, your thoughts at Idea Television. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Idea Television. We are on Facebook, we are on YouTube, we are on all the social medias. Do well to follow us. Want to read your comments, want to hear your opinions. What do you think? Is Nigeria really living in fear? Let's go to our next story we have on the Tribune newspaper. Before we give you the next story, let's go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll do well to give the rest of the stories on the Tribune newspaper this morning.
(5G) technology. 5G technology promises to be a game changer by delivering ultra-fast internet speeds, low latency, and the ability to connect millions of devices seamlessly. It's going to fuel the future of smart cities, autonomous vehicles, and IoT devices, allowing them to communicate in real time. However, 5G rollout isn't without hurdles. High costs of infrastructure and regulatory issues in some regions have slowed down implementation. By 2026, the 5G market is expected to be valued at $667.90 billion, with the US, China, and South Korea leading the change. The challenge? Cybersecurity risks and data privacy will remain top concerns as more devices become connected.
Welcome back from that quick short break. The rest of the stories are going to give you on the Tribune newspaper this morning as we read out the rest of the stories. Oil industry records 0 oil theft in 1 year. That is actually an amazing one there, and congratulations to that once again. We have Uzodinma said Nigeria will win war against terrorism. We pray and hope so. That's a very good one on that. We have on that, you will see on page 4 of the Tribune newspaper this morning. And on page 3, we have monthly injection to control severe asthma discovered. That's on page 3 of our Tribune newspaper. Daily Discovery has been monthly injection to control severe asthma discovered. It has been discovered that there's an injection for asthma. That's a good one. I will have Adeleke might announce new party Wednesday, and we have that on page 3 of our Tribune newspaper. Then on page 2 we have Wike's factions plot fresh PDP national convention, and that's on page 2 of the Tribune newspaper. Right about now, let's take you to the next newspaper we have. On the Punch newspaper this morning, we have other stories on the Punch newspaper this morning, and one of the stories we have on page 41, which reads Abiodun Adeboye Associates honor Adedoyin at 90 birthday Thanksgiving, and that's on page 41. We have the PDP crisis on page 42. Wiki blogs plans state Congress Congress's national convention, and that's on page 42. On page 31 we have Nigerians World Bank debt to hit 9.65 billion US dollars. 9.65 billion US dollars. That's on page 31 of our Punch newspaper. And our now big story this morning, security crisis. Tinubu Macron holds talks as US fact finders arrive, and that you will see on page 2. That's the big story on page 2 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Oh, let's move to the next stories we have here on still the Punch newspaper. We have defection rumors rise as Fubara faces morning assembly, mountain assembly fire, and that's on page 8 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And on page 42 we have we have the Sea River residents gets 1 billion naira compensation. That's a Cross River residents gets 1 billion naira compensation, and you read that on page 42. That's another story there you will want to read. And on page 22 of our Punch newspaper, we have the Aram fighting lasting longer than civil war is troubling, Obasanjo said on page 22. You love to go through that amazing story and know what went down there. And we also have Anambra prison inmate wins international whistleblower award. Interesting and very funny, and that's on page 7 of our Punch newspaper this morning. And on our page 13 of the Punch newspaper, we have the Pengasan Dangote reefs work wider over salary suspension. That's a nice one. Let's go to the next newspaper on this morning newspaper review on our Vanguard newspaper. Let's see what we have there. And one of the stories we have the NERC experts clash as disco revenue rises to 1.7 trillion naira. That you will see on page 21 of the Vanguard newspaper. We also have another story. The UBA group dominates 2025 Banker Awards, emerges Africa's Bank of the Year. That's an interesting story you will love to look at on page 29 of our Vanguard newspaper. And on the big story here we have how Benin Rep Coup failed FG. That's another story you want to go through. All right. We also have on page 6, we have FG secures release of 100 school children adopted in Niger State. That is a very, very, very big and nice story and very appeasing. 100 schoolgirls adopted in Niger State has been released. That's a nice one. Then we have police storm kidnappers camp in Abuja, rescues 7 victims. That's on page 6 of the Vanguard newspaper. That's a very nice one, and it's actually very, very nice. What do you think about this? The rescue mission is actually taking place here and there, and I think it's a good start for us in Nigeria. And the joy and excitement coming at this time of celebration, we are happy that we get to, the adopted people will get to see their families again this celebration month, and they will get to celebrate together. So it's a big news and a nice one. On that news, and that news you will see it on page 6 of our Vanguard newspaper this morning. We have on page 8 PDP crisis. Wike's camp move to reorganize state chapters, conduct fresh Congress convention, and that's on page 8. You love to read that. And we have the AFCON 2025 Super Eagles face chaotic build up. And you will see that on page 8 of the of the Vanguard newspaper, pardon. Let's go move to our next story this morning on our list. Well, not the last story this morning on the Guardian newspaper. One of the big stories we have on the Guardian newspaper, we have relief in Cotonou as NAF joins force rebel coup plotters in Benin Republic, and that's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. One of the stories we have there on page 3 is FG secures release of 100 adopted Niger school children. That we read on the Daily Trust newspaper, is also on the Guardian newspaper. And we have another story, another interesting story here on page 6 of our Guardian newspaper. Concerns over fiscal governance as 2026 budget misses timeline. And that story you read on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper for this morning. And we have shipping lines decry 4.6 billion US dollars store away, $4.6 million store away. That's, you get it on page 7 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. And other interesting stories we have on page 8. We have Benue farmers lament the crashing food prices, and that you'll find on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. And we also have Abuja UBA Group nominates 2025 Bankers Award. That's the nice one that you see on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. What do you think about the release of the adopted people over Nigeria? We see one in Niger State. We also see one in Abuja and the rest of them. What do you think about it? The government is actually working. To me, I would want to read out your thoughts, your comments. What do you think? And that is where you send us all of this information on Idea TV, on all our platforms. Like I said, you follow us on all our social media platforms on Idea Television. And this is the last story we have today on The Guardian on our newspaper review. We hope to bring you more stories tomorrow, more exciting and more touching stories tomorrow. I am Mary Ojimajo. Thanks for watching.